I'm with Eugene Chadbourne, the genre-defying singer-songwriter, American music legend, and I'm at his base of operations, his headquarters in Greensboro, North Carolina, and he's gracious enough to grant me an interview with him, so thank you very much, Eugene, for having me over. I've been waiting a long time to get to meet you and to come out here, so I really very much appreciate this.
The only thing you have to do is get the Bugs Bunny shrine on film.
Eugene Chadbourne has been referenced as sounding a lot like Bugs Bunny when he sings, so I guess that's where that Bugs Bunny thing comes from?
I think that, well, I always was a fan, and then an early a so-called bad review I really liked. It was a heavy metal magazine, Kerrang.
Mm-hmm.
They said I could be the greatest heavy metal performer ever, but I insisted on singing like Bugs Bunny. I was like, that's so cool. Yeah.
Is that where the term doc came from, because of the What's Up Doc?
That's also kind of a lot of musicians use that term doc.
Okay.
And I don't know how it started exactly, but some people would call me that, and then once we put it on a poster for fun, Dr. Eugene Chadbourne.
Okay.
Kind of took off, I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
It's like a mad doctor.
I can see that, yeah.
I tell people it's short for dropout. My dad used to say, I'm the real Dr. Chadbourne.
What drew you to freeform music? When you started playing freeform music, what drew you to finding that as an expression of music?
Well, I don't really understand that expression. When you get inside music, it all has form. And so I understand what people are trying to say when they use that expression. I'm not trying to be cute about it.
No, right, yeah.
It's usually something that sounds really weird to them, or they don't hear the form.
Right.
Or you can go to a lot of trouble to give the appearance that there's no form.
Right.
But there's always some kind of a form.
Sure.
When I saw Tim Buckley play live, the guitar player Lee Underwood, the way he was playing, I remember distinctly thinking this was, I don't know if I thought this is free form, but what was different was he wasn't playing the usual scales all the rock guitar players played. It was like I didn't quite understand, but he was playing not the most obvious thing that would go with the chord. It was a kind of approach like a jazz musician would have. So, that I remember things like that appealing to me. I liked the sound of it. I didn't really understand exactly what was going on. But other things that appealed to me around the same time, like for understanding what blues was, how blues progressions, what they sounded like, actually hearing something like that and realizing, oh, they're playing a blues progression.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And that's a form, so,
right.
Yeah.
When you started practicing guitar or learning how to play guitar, like to me, I never heard a person actually like lift their hand and make it on the guitar. Like, is that like because of like the Looney Tunes music, Carl Stalling kind of thing, or was there a musician? I would maybe assume Derek Bailey was kind of doing things.
I probably did that because I saw conga drummers doing it.
Oh, okay.
But I don't exactly. No, I don't think Derek Bailey ever did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, something you can do on a lot of different things.
I've seen you play
funny.
live many times.
I had a review once where the guy said it made him sick.
What, lifting the guitar?
Yeah, and I was taking spit.
What do you think doing the live sax solos?
And yeah, and then there was a concert in Sweden where I started, there was a huge, like an old stuffed duck on the wall, and I took it down off the wall and started attacking it with the electric rake and everything, and I was handling it, and then I played a guitar solo, and they were like, after you handle that duck, you put your fingers in your mouth. I'm really worried. I said, well, you think I need to go to the hospital or something?
Yeah, sure.
Bird flu or something? I don't know. Yeah, so.
Speaking of the rake, and I know there's an electric plunger and the dog skull you use, I know there's a quote saying, imagine someone breaks into your car, steals a guitar case thinking there's a guitar in it, and goes home to find out that there is a rake, an electric plunger, and a dog skull in it. That actually happens.
Yeah, or like if it's a thief and they don't even look, they just go to the pawn. They just go to the pawn shop with it. I know. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall.
Where was that car and that guitar case full of these odd instruments?
Where do you think someone breaks into a car?
Yeah, I don't. New York City.
Yeah, it's New York City.
Okay.
Yeah, that shit could be in my car here for a year and nobody would come into it. Yeah, I don't know. No, people do. We've had some things. We've had people go into the car. I have to keep the car locked. That's too bad in the driveway. The people go in and rifle for change and
right.
A lot of times in a neighborhood
like
this,
they
it's kids messing around,
Yeah, sure.
stealing things, or
In regards to the evolution of your music, when you stopped doing, pardon the form of fiction, for freeform, but the improvised kind of noisy jazz or whatever you want to call it, what would you technically call that genre music? It's not quite free jazz, but it's kind of something that came out of the late 70s, early 80s. What would be a best description for that kind of style of music? I hate to impose titles, but people feel nice describing things.
No, I know. There's always an attempt to describe it. I mean, obviously, some of that music was related to jazz, and then you run into a situation where it's not anymore.
Yeah.
And then some of the people playing they don't come out of jazz, and so they don't appreciate all the references all the time.
Right.
So there's this period where you're kind of listening to a lot of different music, outside the realm of what's popular, and so the jazz leads you to this like period where it got very far out, and then this music, particularly in Europe, this improvised music started coming in that didn't always reference jazz, but sometimes did, and it was kind of an international movement.
Wow.
With a lot of people involved in that sometimes were involved in jazz and sometimes not, and then sometimes it was the connection is avant-garde modern classical music. Okay. Some of which and some of which was also like was very inspirational. People like Maurizio Kagel or Stockhouse, these. My father took me to see the Hungarian string quartet play Bartók when they were on this U.S. tour, which must have been like in the early 70s or something, or even the late 60s. But I remember hearing this string quartets and the pizzicato on the cello and thinking that was just really, really cool. Wow. There's that whole element too of it, and then there's electronic music, people doing, so there's a lot of different stuff, and then everybody was into ethnic music too, into African music, right? And then you would hear some weird thing on an African record, right? So, and I imagine obviously the situation's still the same. It's easier than ever to listen to all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah, it's really available. It's like an information overload.
Available. Yeah. Well, in some ways, I mean, it makes it easier. When I used to go around, there was a whole thing about if people just heard a taste of what I did, maybe they would be interested in coming to the concert. But instead of just having some idiot say, "Oh, yeah, it plays weird guitar," you wouldn't like it. Sure. But now it's just so easy to sample things and stuff. So,
what would you recommend to someone that's not initiated with a lot of Eugene Chadbourne music? Because I'm going to take a wild guess. Is there 200 some albums that one could find you on?
Probably, yeah, but not everything is available still. Right, There's a lot of CDs, and then the nature of what you do to document with recorded music has really changed. When I started out, it was you were trying to make an album that was like everything you did, you compared it to A Love Supreme or Sgt. Pepper or something. Yeah, sure. Trying to make like a really brilliant album, and these things they were a big investment and they would be around for a long time. And then, eventually when the CDR came in or in the cassette, you could start printing small batches of things. And suddenly the business was, if you could sell them at the concerts, if there was people were interested, you could make a profit doing it rather than just losing money. And so now I try to document things that are very recent, especially on tour. People are like, do you have something that's like the concert? Well, how about last night's concert? Yeah, how about that? So if you get recordings and you can print them while you're traveling and make covers, it's a challenge, but it's really fun. So that I'm doing a lot of that now and seeing how far I can go with that. every now and then.
Wow.
People are still producing vinyl stuff.
Yeah.
The business is weird. People are really, what's valuable now is like things I did in the 80s that at the time I couldn't get anyone interested in.
Yeah, sure.
So, it's almost now, if I could record something and pretend it was from 1980 and convince somebody, they would put it out. But if I said it's new, they won't.
Yeah, that's
it's kind of weird. But the music business is just loony.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's incredible I've been able to survive all this time, but part of it is because I can go and play somewhere with a guitar and walk out with a bunch of cash, So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think is probably your best-selling or most referenced or popular?
Well, the best-selling one was the first one.
No Tears?
With Camper Van Beethoven.
Oh, okay.
Camper Van Chadbourne.
Right.
Probably Tears may have surpassed that at this point because it's been reprinted so many times. I mean, those are both things that have sold more than 10,000 copies easily.
How many was it? How many was in print when I bought it? I have that, and it was still in seal, and I got it for like $80. One of the.
What? There'll Be No Tears.
Yeah, I got that at Double Decker. They actually reserved it for me when I got it.
So that's the first pressing, probably, or something.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember it came out. We sold them all. We printed it again. Then I licensed it for another. I don't know how many copies they printed. And then I licensed it on CD, and then I had it available. I've had it available on my own label as a CDR.
Yeah.
And then I licensed it a couple of years ago again to that Corbett and Dempsey label. So.
Okay.
And I don't know. I think they printed 1,500 copies. I'm not sure, but you've got. At least 10,000 copies have been printed, just LPs, and I don't know how many CDs have been sold,
Where do you think's the highest concentration of Eugene Chadbourne records? Is it in Germany, Japan? Is it in the South, in New York City?
It's just in different people's houses.
Yeah.
Some people have huge collections.
Okay, all right, yeah.
And there's a guy in Austria, there's a couple people around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are people that tell me, at my grandma's house, I've got a box of your cassettes. And sometimes people just give them to me, like, here.
Yeah, I hope Grandma enjoys them.
Yeah. There's a guy here that's got his whole vinyl collection and everything is out at his mom's place because he lives in such a small apartment. And I'm like, you were collecting records all the way through the 80s and 90s. I bet there's a shitload of vinyl stuff you could sell for a lot of money.
Yeah, right.
I said, you wouldn't believe. That was last year. I started narrowing down my record collection, and I realized I had certain things that I probably was never going to listen to again. That somebody would pay $100 for. It's like crazy,
That made me think, because I know like somebody like Prince only listened to his own music, where he claimed that he did. Do you listen to your own music, or you ever feel compelled?
I have. If you're producing it, you listen to it quite a lot until it's out, and then you probably maybe not again. It's a funny thing sometimes I'm somewhere where they're playing a record and I'm like, what is this? Yeah. So it just happened the other day.
Yeah, sure.
I said, what is this? And they said, you don't recognize this? I said, this is, it was at one of my kids' house. I said, what? I said, what is this? And she said, this is one of my favorite records you made with a Noah John band from Madison called Country Protest Anew. Okay. I said, I didn't even remember we did this song on this record. So, I don't remember them all very well. Sometimes after they're
200 some albums in a catalog might be kind of get fuzzy in the mind.
Yeah.
Wow. I know these questions you've dealt with dozens of hundreds of times, but the transition from playing that kind of noisy jazz improv music to go into country music, what was it that drew you to that? And I think that was one of the boldest moves for any musical genre, just to switch into something.
Well, I really enjoyed the country music, and then it was something. Sometimes things happen. You get a really negative reaction, and then that makes you more interested in doing it.
Sure, I've been there.
I don't know how far back this relates. Is this part of like my mother telling me I shouldn't wear an army jacket, and then it was like I want to wear an army jacket? I don't know, but there was a weird reaction with some of the musicians that people either really liked the idea, or I would hear that even some of the people that were rehearsing with me were bad-mouthing, like, what the fuck
Like,
is he in
John Zorn?
Well, he didn't understand what I liked about the country music. He
Mm.
did a really beautiful job playing on that record, but
Sure,
he told people he didn't understand what the hell
Mm.
I was up to. And then some of the people made comments that I thought, well, they don't know what country and western is. They think it's music about cowboys or something.
Right, sure.
They don't really know. They don't know Merle
Yeah.
Haggard or Willie
Mm.
Nelson or Johnny Cash. So at first there was this negative thing that kind of encouraged me.
Mm.
There must be something going on if it pisses people off. Because I'd seen, I went to see Captain Beefheart in Calgary, an incredible concert.
Mm.
Most of the audience wanted to kill him. So, but then when we started going out and playing stuff like that was the first time I had a reaction that I was doing something really original.
Sure.
That if you wanted to experience this, you had to come to me.
Mm.
It wasn't like I was running a pizza place or something.
Yeah, sure.
Before that, it was like, oh, he plays weird guitar,
Right,
like Derek Bailey.
Yeah, right.
And then this writer, Paul Haynes, said to me, why should I listen to your record when I can listen to Derek Bailey? I mean, this was an older guy trying to make me feel like shit.
Right.
But I thought, I want to do something so that no one would ever say that.
Mm.
And so then we started playing, we would get this reaction like, I love country and western and I love free jazz and free improvised music, but I never thought I'd hear it in the same set.
Sure.
So this, and then from this, a whole kind of audience that was interested in it grew out of it. With Shockabilly, we tried to cash in kind of
I love
the
rock
new wave
musicians.
rock, right?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of venues and possibilities to do that. Where if we were playing like that, it was. Whereas with the country music, it was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It got better a few years later. Then suddenly you had alt country, and
right, sure.
There was a lot more. But at the beginning, there was not much. It was a lot easier to say we're kind of like a heavy psychedelic band. People compared it to the Cramps. Or
right on. Speaking of how audiences were either confused or upset, or they loved it or hated it, did you ever find, and I'm sure you have, what's the best heckling situation or being unplugged, or is this the audience was just uproarious and infuriated about what you were doing?
Well,
what's one of those? Is that more earlier? Is that?
I have a note around somewhere. Getting unplugged is kind of a drag because then you just can't keep playing. But I remember this in Dallas, this place we should never have played, Charlie's or something. It was like a club out in a shopping mall.
Mm-hmm. Well, about what year was this in your career?
1980 probably or something, but I remember the guy after a couple of songs, this napkin gets brought up to the stage. It says, "Stop now, or I'll cut the power."
Okay.
And I was like,
do you remember what song it was that inspired that napkin?
It could have been 19th Nervous Breakdown, something, whatever. But then I announced that we'd had this request for this, but we don't know the song.
We're not taking napkin.
And then we started the next song, and then the guy cut the power.
Oh, how about that?
And that was the end of that.
Yeah.
One situation I remember that was really enjoyable, this was in South Carolina. It was a free outdoor show in the summer in back of this club, which is something like that is guaranteed to draw a huge crowd. And there were a lot of people there, and there were a lot of military there. And some of them got upset at my lyrics. And then, of course, some of them agreed completely with my lyrics. So there was this kind of shouting match going on in the audience about politics and stuff. That was even within branches of the military.
Yeah, wow.
It was kind of funny. But that was, I think it was one of those, it's one of the some guy from the Army said to me, there's more pictures of you up in the barracks than chicks right now. And that was a guy that at one point they ordered so much music. Yeah. And I remember it was going to a base. It had a military base. Wow. It was on the address. Yeah.
That's pretty flattering, right? You're boosting soldier morale. You're like the Bob Hope
Well,
of your era.
you grow up with the Vietnam thing. You
Yeah.
see the soldiers were a lot of them were against the war, and they were all into all the music and everything too. So it's kind of and it was with the punk music. There was when you went to play in Fayetteville,
I know the song Vietnam is about,
You had a lot of military people.
Oh, is that a military base in North
Yeah.
Carolina? Okay, I did.
You have a lot of military people coming, and then some of these young people they like that music just because not my music, but the like I used to do I played in Vietnam on a show with Corrosion of Conformity. We used to do a lot of benefits around here. That's
You call it Vietnam, or is this as like a local?
well, that was a local thing that they called it Vietnam,
okay.
and then
Sure.
I came up with a song based on
Love the
different,
song, yeah.
different stories people told me, and then
Was there really a
different-
quick and something car wash?
yeah, the quick clean car wash, and then there was a
With
thing,
all Ks?
and then there was a guy making acid on the camouflage blotter paper. I mean, all this stuff happened.
Wow.
So there was always plenty of material. A guy I know was a disc jockey there for a while. He would feed me funny stuff. But the only time I was going to play there actually after the show, it was a show in Raleigh with Corrosion and Conformity. A lot of people came up from the base because they liked slam dancing and picking fights and stuff on the dance floor. And Corrosion and Conformity was a really heavy. They even they started touring with heavy metal bands instead of the punk rock thing. But,
wow.
Yeah, they were. I don't know if they're still around, but they were local. There was a period where every political benefit they were there. I was there. It's kind of fun.
Through corresponding with you in the last couple of months, you told me one of the most fascinating stories behind one of my favorite songs of yours, "The Land That Used to Be."
Right, I told you about the guy.
Yeah, would you mind sharing that story from the
No, and
beginning?
then I'll tell you about the other song you mentioned too. But so Land of Used to Be. It's funny you get these weird requests, and this one just turned out to be total bullshit. But yeah, this guy wrote me and said he was from the publisher, actually one of the most famous country publishing companies. If you're into the kind of classic stuff, tree music, Roger Miller and
right.
He said Merle Haggard was looking for some material for his new album and something a little bit more tough, because he'd been putting out these cheesy records.
Sure.
And this was a few years before he came out with that "If Only I Could Fly" record, wishing all these old things were new. That was kind of like suddenly he was trying to be relevant again, and he came on really strong. But he'd been really not doing much. So that I came up with that song, which I thought was really a perfect thing for him. And I thought of it driving through Louisiana, just driving through this area where oh, look, here comes a cafe. Oh no, it's closed. Everything was closed. Sure. Yeah. And you see that a lot in the country driving around. I mean, when they talk about the country being full, the country's empty, man, when you drive around.
That's why I
you see
relate to it
that
because Allentown and then the coal region, the
Yeah.
Rust Belt, everything's basically a ghost town.
I drove out west to play last year, and I couldn't believe some areas there's just nobody. There's nothing. I mean, it's like shit. There's plenty of room for people to get things going, farm or whatever. Just put some dough into it,
Yeah, right.
But yeah, and then it turned out this guy, when I followed up on it, the guy said, "Well, I know you're going to be mad, but I'm just a janitor in the building."
Oh,
I was looking for some tapes. Yeah.
So he confessed to
I
it.
got a tape from Bella Fleck too. It's really good.
He's bragging about his height.
He confessed, and later I thought, well, that's really funny because there was a time when Chris Christopherson was a janitor at Tree Music.
Oh, sure. You referenced that. I didn't know that reference.
Yeah, and he couldn't get anyone to listen to his music. He finally did this thing where he used to fly helicopters in the Air Force. He rented this helicopter and he flew it out to this private island where Johnny Cash was and threw the tape down there. And that was Help Me Make It Through the Night, I think.
Wow, okay.
Johnny Cash decided it was really good. And then suddenly...
Right.
Yeah. So, anyway, you mentioned that song Wrestling Woman.
Yes.
That's kind of funny, too, because... I used to be in this neighborhood, a used bookstore, used magazine store. And I remember that was one of the first things that caught my eye when I was traveling through here and checking out this neighborhood and thinking about maybe moving here. I remember thinking, well, there's a used bookstore in the neighborhood. That's a good sign. But this guy used to have a huge collection of these trashy men's magazines like they used to have in barber shops.
Sure.
So after we'd made we did a record for Rough Trade. We realized we would make a lot more money with them if we weren't doing cover versions. If we did original songs, because there's a lot more money in the publishing of original songs than doing a cover.
Yeah.
So I remember Kramer was like, "Well, we have to work on some songs." I said, "There's nothing to it. I used to write a lot of songs. I haven't been writing songs recently, but I thought there's no reason I can't write rock and roll songs." So I went down there. I thought I'll get some inspiration down there, and I bought one of these. Men's magazines, and just from the titles of several things in there, I had Voodoo Vengeance, Vampire Tiger Girl Strikes Again, The City of Corruption, and Wrestling Woman,
all from the same magazine.
And then there was a thing called Shocking Weekend, and then I turned that into Shockabilly Weekend. Yeah, that was all out of the same goddamn magazine. And in some cases, I just Voodoo Vengeance, as she was tired and 22, she was lost in the swamp. I think that was the first two lines.
Yeah, right.
I just lifted whole things from the story. It was really funny. So I think I wrote those five. Okay. I think I wrote those 5 songs in one afternoon.
Wow.
And then, the music was a little bit more difficult, but not that hard.
Wow, fantastic. In my head, because I'm from Allentown, that's the wrestling headquarters at one time in the 80s and 90s. So
there was even another one, too, that's not as well known, because I don't think we just put it on some, compilations. Cops versus Guardian Angels.
Okay.
Because that was a kind of...
That's a Shockabilly song?
Yeah, that was a kind of exploitive piece in the magazine about these fights on the New York subways between the police and this organization that existed at the time, the Guardian Angels. They used to ride the subway with these red berets and look for troublemakers. and they were trained in martial arts and stuff. Yeah. And the police didn't really like them because they were this is our job, and this guy you just beat up, he didn't do anything. There were some bad things like that. So they had this Cops versus Guardian Angels. That was another one.
Wow.
Yeah, that all came out of that same magazine.
Do you still have a copy of that magazine by chance?
No.
No, okay.
No, I don't know what happened.
You weren't archiving yet.
I don't know, but I mean that's it. It is kind of you can come up with especially parody songs too. I have this memory of high school from the journalism class. We were supposed to produce a kind of a pageant at the end of the year. And the really popular movie was MASH. So we ended up doing something based on that. And they needed a couple of songs. And I remember I just wrote parody songs.
Okay. The Suicide is Painless, a parody to that?
Well, I can't remember what material we used. But maybe it was songs that were popular on the radio at the time or something. But I remember they were the cheerleader was going, "I can't believe you could just do this. Sit down and do this." I said, it's not so hard. Anyway.
Because we're running out of time on the recording device, you are a provocateur of so many genres, so many styles, and you've been surviving and doing it for decades on your own terms. Any words of advice to any musicians out there that are trying to survive and making it happen, doing their own unusual music? How does one stay inspired and keep it going?
2 minutes.
When Louis produced this play, one of the things he wrote about the play was how much that he wrote this play because he enjoyed it. And I said to him, that's the key to the whole thing. You got to do something that you really enjoy. When you're starting out doing music, nobody likes it but you.
Sure.
So you better like it,
Right.
If you don't like it, you're never going to. So do something you really like. Don't listen to anybody's advice about doing something different. Okay. Find something you really like. And that's always someone said, why do you make these records? I said, I make them because I want to hear something like that, and I don't hear anybody else doing it. So.
Wow.
I hear other people doing stuff I like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, sure. I'm reminded of a George Orwell quote. Said they asked him why he writes the books he writes. He says, "I like to write the books that I never found on bookshelves."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So.
I really thank you so much, Eugene.
Sure, come on in
and
check out the little shop.
Oh, I'd love to.
Office.
He's gonna take a nap here. How about that? Punch out.